Hey everybody, it's Emily at ARG Schooling, and today I'm going to do another recommendations based on the Build Your Library Reading Challenge, and I'm going to be giving you recommendations for BIPOC authored books. Okay, so today's recommendations video is going to be for BIPOC authored books. So it's one of the prompts in the reading challenge is to read a book by a BIPOC author. But what is that? So BIPOC is BIPOC, and it means a Black, Indigenous, or person of color. So that gives us a pretty wide range of diverse reading material, and I have 12 books to recommend to you. So I've organized them. So I have a stack of books by Black authors, I have a stack by Indigenous authors, and a stack by people of color, which I'm like, when I made my stack, they ended all being Asian. so we're gonna go through and talk about these today. So I want to kick off with some middle grade recommendations. I have Opies Ghost by Justine Ireland. This is one of my favorite middle grade books. So this is set in the 1920s, and we're following a girl who's living in, I think, Mississippi at the beginning of the story, and her father is murdered by a bunch of white people. He was lynched, and so her mother moves her up to some relatives in the north. And so this is also like a Great Migration kind of a story, but also it's about ghosts and trauma and like learning to cope with those kinds of things happening to you. And the story is so interesting because it's told in like a haunted house sort of way without being overly scary. It is unsettling and it is, you know, intense, but I don't think this is like a scary book. So I would say if you're not sure if your child should read this, I would pre-read it first and see if you think it's appropriate. But I think this is such a great story. Opie is a really great character. Like, she learns early on that she has the ability to see ghosts, and like she has to help these ghosts move on. And she wants to do good and she wants to help, but she also knows that this can be dangerous in a lot of ways. And yeah, this is just a really good story. Highly recommend. I want to recommend Tristan Strong, Punches a Hole in the Sky by Kwame Mbalia. I adore this book. This is such a, like, mix of emotions all at once. Like, it's a story about a boy dealing with the grief over losing his best friend, but it's also just this rollicking adventure. There's so many interesting characters, like African-American folklore, and I just love how fun this book is. Like, Kwame Mbalia his writing is just magical. So we're following Tristan. Yeah, he's spending the summer with his grandparents in the South to kind of heal from the trauma of losing his best friend. And, you know, he meets a lot of magical creatures who need his help with something. And it's a great story. Like, I love the way that the author writes. I love the voices of the characters. Each character has such a strong personality and voice, and this is just a really great series. Okay, so for Indigenous middle grade, I have two selections. I have The Race to the Truth, Colonization, and The Wampanoag Story by Linda Kums. This is nonfiction. So this would hit two prompts because it's a BIPOC authored book, but it's also nonfiction. So you could hit both of those categories. So this book is part fiction and nonfiction. So you're following this Indigenous family pre-colonization, and you're like experiencing a year in their lives over the course of the book. And in between each of those sections, the author gives you a nonfiction, like what happened after colonization. Like, it's done really well. I think it's super informative. This is a really readable book. It's a really interesting book about history, but I loved the way the author tells a story about the Indigenous family over the course of the year. That's my favorite part of this, is just like seeing what that was like. I love slice of life stories like that. I love seeing like what things look like, how people did things, like what life was like in that time. So I love that aspect of this a lot. But also the nonfiction part was really great too. There's so much information in here, I feel like this is a great option. I also, I wrote an entire unit study for the Thanksgiving unit based on how great this book is. So, I have Ancestor approved, Intertribal Stories for Kids, edited by Cynthia Liic Smith, and this is also one of those books with like a whole bunch of different authors, each tell a story. I love that. I love getting to explore new authors and getting to try them out. So this is a great way to introduce new authors to your kids. This is a collection of stories that are all told about different kids going to the same powwow. So because it's all at the same powwow, there's a lot of crossover happening, which I just think is really cool because it's a bunch of different authors. So you get to see like through different perspectives, but you're seeing a lot of the same characters all coming together in different ways. I love that. So this is a really great collection and a really great introduction to Indigenous fiction because you're going to get to try out so many different authors. And then for people of color, I have While I Was Away by Waka T. Brown, which is one of my all-time favorite middle grade memoirs. This is a book. This is technically nonfiction, but it reads like fiction, so it like dances right on that border. This is a story about the author's childhood when she spent an extended summer in Japan with her grandmother because her parents wanted her to not forget that she's also Japanese, and they wanted her to work on her language skills. So they thought, you can go stay for the summer, you can go to school for a little while in Japan and really hone those skills, and also get to spend some time with your grandmother. And so that's what this book is about. So you're getting to see, again, slice of life. I love that. You're getting to see what it was like in the 1980s to live in Japan, to go to school there. Like, what was life like then? You get to experience her, like, I don't want to say culture shock because that's not quite the word I'm looking for, but like getting to experience her own culture firsthand when she's not used to like that kind of environment. And also her getting to know her grandmother and like the struggle she has developing a relationship with her. And I just think this is excellent middle grade. It's so good, so readable. I loved this. I passed it on to my daughter and she loved it. So like, I think this is one of those like, everybody should read this kind of books because I think everyone can get something out of it. Now I want to move on to young adult YA books. So I want to start, and I'm using this as my book I'm going to recommend, but honestly, anything written by Tiffany D Jackson, I would recommend to you. But this is my personal favorite, is The Weight of Blood. This book is I don't want to call it a horror novel because I don't think it's horror. I think this falls more under thriller territory. It's very thrilling. I don't think it's overly scary. This is her take on Carrie by Stephen King. So we're following Maddie, who is a biracial teenage girl. She's been raised by her white father, who absolutely hates that she is part black, and he's raised her to kind of hate that part of herself and try to hide it. She can pass as white as long as she can maintain her hair. And that is what kind of sets off this entire story, is that one day her hair gets wet, it frizzes up, and she freaks out. And people realize for the first time that, wait, is she maybe biracial? And she panics and realizes she has telekinesis. And so, like, it's kind of like Carrie in that aspect that, like, there's some bullying, she has telekinesis and that sort of thing, but it comes at the story in a very different and unique way, and, like, I thoroughly enjoyed myself reading this. I think this is excellent. It raises a lot of good discussion topics, just very thought-provoking book. I have to recommend Legendborn by Tracy Dion because I'm trying to force myself to pick up the next book in this series. Not force myself because I don't want to, but force myself because I am terrible at remembering to continue in a series. I'm just not great at that, but like I really want to continue this book series. So this is Tracy Dion's take on Arthurian mythology, the King Arthur legends. And this is set in modern day, and we're following Bree as she is trying to understand what happened to her mother. Her mother has died before the beginning of this book, and she's still dealing with the trauma and the grief and all of that, but she's also feeling like her mother was hiding something from her. So she wants to figure out what that thing is. And so she decides to go to this summer program at UNC Chapel Hill where her mother went. And she wants to try to like figure out what this missing thing is. And she uncovers this whole secret society based around King Arthur legends, but she also realizes that she herself has some magical ability that she doesn't fully understand what it is or why she has it or how it works. And so I'm not going to go any deeper than that because like I don't want to start spoiling things, but this is such a plot twisty, exciting story. I was completely captivated. I think this raises so many interesting conversations about racism, and especially like the kind of racism that people don't even realize they have. There's a lot of like, oh, I don't dislike black people. I just think, that they should stay to themselves. That kind of thing. There's a lot of like discussion about that kind of stuff in here. I thought this book was riveting, and I really do want to read the next book in the series. My YA recommendation for an Indigenous author is Breeding Sweetgrass for Young Adults by Robin Wall Kimmerer. I still haven't read the adult version of this book because I read this and I just feel like this was so good. Like, I need to read the adult version because I feel like I'd get even more out of it, but like I thoroughly loved this. This is nonfiction, again, so it counts for both prompts. This is about the Indigenous relationship to nature and how like that is a key aspect that we as a society are missing, and like how we can better relate to the land when we respect it and see ourselves as a part of it. I just think this is a really important book. I feel like everybody should read this. I really appreciate the in the young adult version that she gives you like discussion questions. So like at the end of each chapter, there's like a little discussion piece. So like at the very bottom, it'll say like, what is one thing you can do to be a part of the dance of regeneration? And I just think that's really helpful. So I don't know. I think this is excellent. And I'm excited to read this with my daughter later this year. And for a people of color book, I want to recommend Gold Mountain by Betty G. Yee. This was one of my favorite books last year. And I just think like it's very underrated. I have seen nobody talk about this book besides me. And like, I think this is definitely a book that a lot of people would enjoy. This is a story about a girl who's in China and her father has been arrested and her brother has died, and she is trying to do whatever she can to help her father. And her brother was supposed to go to America to work on the Transcontinental Railroad, but because he died, she still has his ticket. So she decides her best course of action to help her father is to dress up as a boy, take on her brother's name, and go to America, to California, to work on the Transcontinental Railroad. And so she's in disguise. She's discovering she's stronger than she realized. One, I just love stories about girls dressing as boys and like kind of trying to hide who they are so that they can do things that we take for granted that women can do now. Whether that's be a soldier or, work on the Transcontinental Railroad. But I loved the intrigue. There's so much like deception happening and sabotage happening behind the scenes as these two railroad companies are competing. They want to like sabotage each other so that one can be the dominant and make more money and that kind of thing. And seeing the way that they treated the Chinese workers was also really eye-opening. I just think this was really well done. The writing is excellent. And the story is like very captivating. Like I could not put this down. Okay, I have 3 more recommendations. I want to recommend Lone Women by Victor Laval. This is adult horror. And this is a story, this is like historical horror because it's set in the Midwest in 1915. We're following Adelaide as she's leaving home in California. And her house is burning down and she's running away. She's bringing this enormous trunk with her, and it's very heavy and very mysterious. We know there's something weird going on there. And so she's going to Montana because she's heard that anyone, including a black woman, can go to Montana and prove up if they can get themselves a plot of land, if they can prove that they can work the land within a certain amount of time, I think it's like 3 years, then they will be able to own that land outright. And so she's decided that's her best course of action. So this is a book about her going off to homestead, but also like what secrets and trauma is she bringing with her, and how will that affect her stay there and the people that she meets in her life. There's a great diverse cast of characters. I love the different multiple perspective storytelling, so you'll get multiple perspectives in this book, so it counts towards that prompt as well. And it's just a really interesting story. The writing is very cinematic. I felt like I was watching a movie. I feel like this should be adapted because I think it would work really well. I want to recommend Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. This is my favorite Nnedi Okorafor that I've read so far. I want to read more of her work though because I find it absolutely beautiful. She is the queen of world building. Her world building is just, I've never seen anything like it. Binti is a story. This is a bind up. The original I think is 3 novellas, but this is the whole thing, and plus there's a bonus story included in this. Binti is about a girl named Binti who is leaving her home for the first time. Her people do not leave Earth, and their culture is very tied to the land. And Binti sees herself as being able to do all these things. She has all of this skill, and she's very smart and really good at math, and she wants to do something with it. And she's always dreamed of going to this university in space. So she decides to go against her family's wishes and go. And of course, things don't go the way she'd planned. By the end of the story, her life is so different from anything she could have imagined. I adore this book, and I've read it twice. I'm going to be reading it again with my daughter at some point this year, and I can't wait to experience it again. Like I said, the world building in this is just amazing. From the creatures that you meet, the species of alien, from the magic that we see happen. It's all so fascinating. I'll say though, her stories are a lot more vibes than plot. So if you are the kind of person who needs a very strong plot, you might not enjoy this. But if you don't mind not having a strong plot and just having a lot of great character growth and a lot of just amazing world building and vibes, you're gonna love this. And the last book I want to recommend is Babel by R.F. Kuang. I read this last year and absolutely loved it. This is so good. I'm going to be reading it again either later this month or next month because I'm putting it in level 11 as I work on that update. I cannot say enough good things about this book. If you want to read a book about the experiences of BIPOC people dealing with colonization firsthand, this book is excellent. You will learn things. You will be upset. You will cry probably. This book is just so well done. This is a historical fantasy, and it's set in Oxford in 1828. And in the mid 1800s, because this covers a pretty wide swath of time. And we're following a group of characters who meet for the first time at university, and they've all been kind of groomed to work for the Babel part of Oxford, which is where they do a lot of translation work for their magic. The magic system in this book is really interesting because it's all about languages. And so they need people who can speak many languages well, but also have maintained the ability to speak their native language. So they have to be foreign born and come to the school to study other languages so that they can be able to do the magic properly. And there's all the secret society stuff, and it's about revolution, and it's just so good. Like, I loved this, and I'm excited to read it again. So those are my recommendations for books by BIPOC authors. I would love if you could go to the comments and give some recommendations of your own, and we could build a great resource for like finding recommendations for books for the Build Your Library Reading Challenge this year. So let me know too, like, what are you reading for the reading challenge for this prompt? I would love to know. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I hope you give it a like and subscribe. That would be amazing. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys next time. Happy reading. Bye.